Hey everyone, welcome back to Podcast with Ali and Aiza. I'm Ali, and I'm so happy you're here with us today. Whether you're listening while you're having your morning coffee, commuting to work, or just relaxing at home, we're really glad you decided to spend some time with us. We always try to make these episodes feel like you're just sitting down with two friends who happen to love talking about English, and today is going to be no different. We've got a really practical topic lined up that I think you're going to find super useful in your everyday life.
And I'm Aiza. It's great to have you here. You know, one of the things we love most about doing this podcast is that we get to explore topics that actually matter in real conversations, not the textbook stuff that feels stiff and formal, but the kind of English you actually need when you're meeting new people, making friends, or networking professionally. And speaking of real conversations, today we're going to talk about something that comes up all the time when you meet someone new, talking about your job. Think about it. When you meet someone at a party, at a conference, or even just chatting with your neighbor, one of the first questions that usually pops up is something like, "So, what do you do?" or "Where do you work?" And if you're learning English, that question can sometimes feel a bit tricky to answer in a natural, confident way.
Absolutely. And that's exactly why we wanted to dedicate a whole episode to this. Because here's the thing, talking about your job isn't just about saying, I'm a teacher or I work in a bank. There's so much more you can say to make the conversation interesting and to really connect with the person you're talking to. Plus, when you know how to talk about your work in different ways, you feel more confident. And confidence is everything when you're learning a language. So today, we're going to walk through all the different ways you can describe what you do, where you work, and even how you feel about your job. We'll give you lots of examples, break down useful phrases, and of course, we'll explain any vocabulary that might be new to you. Sound good?
Sounds perfect. And don't worry, we're keeping everything simple and conversational. We're not going to overwhelm you with complicated grammar or business jargon. Just natural, everyday English that you can start using right away. So let's jump right in. The first thing people usually want to know is the basics: what you do and where you work. And there are actually a few different ways to introduce your job depending on what you want to emphasize. You can start with, "I'm a," and then your job title, like "I'm a nurse" or "I'm a graphic designer." That's the most straightforward way. But you can also say, "I work in," when you want to talk about the field or industry you're in. For example, "I work in healthcare," or "I work in digital marketing." That word field just means the general area or type of work, like technology, education, finance. Those are all different fields.
Right, and here's where it gets interesting. When you use I work in with just the field, you don't use an article like or the. So you would say I work in education, not I work in the education. But if you're talking about a specific place or department, then you do use an article. For instance, I work in the marketing department or I work in a hospital. See the difference? One is about the general field, and the other is about a specific location or department within a company. It's a small detail, but it makes your English sound really natural. And then there's another way to introduce your job, which is I work for. This one is used when you want to mention the company you work for. So you might say, I work for Google, or I work for a small startup, or I work for an international law firm.
Exactly. And you can actually combine these phrases to give more information all at once. Imagine someone asks what you do, and you say, "I'm a software engineer. I work in tech, and I work for a company that develops mobile apps." See how that flows? You've given them your job title, your field, and information about your company all in one smooth answer. Now, let's talk a bit more about describing your company, because that's often what comes next in the conversation. People are usually curious about where you work, especially if you seem passionate about it. You can describe your company using adjectives that give people a sense of its size and scope. Is it a small local business or a large multinational corporation? Is it a startup or an established company?
Yeah, and here's a really useful structure you can use. Try saying, I work for a, and then add an adjective and then describe what the company does. For example, I work for a medium sized consulting firm that helps businesses improve their operations. Or I work for a fast growing tech company that makes educational software. That word fast growing means the company is expanding quickly, getting bigger, hiring more people, reaching more customers. It's a phrase you hear a lot in business contexts. And if you want to be even more specific, you can add where the company is based. You could say, I work for a German automotive company, or I work for a locally owned restaurant that's been around for 30 years.
That's so useful. And what if you don't work for a traditional company? Maybe you're self-employed or you're a freelancer or you run your own business. There are specific ways to talk about that too. If you work independently for different clients, you can say, I'm a freelancer or I work freelance. If you have your own business, you might say, I'm self-employed or I'm a business owner or even I run my own business. All of those phrases communicate that you're working for yourself rather than for someone else's company. And here's something that's really thoughtful to know. If you're currently not working, there are polite and positive ways to explain that situation too. You can say, I'm between jobs at the moment, which sounds much nicer and more optimistic than saying, I'm unemployed.
That's such a good point. Language is so much about how we frame things, right? Between jobs suggests this temporary, that you're in transition, which feels more positive. Or if you've chosen to take time off for a specific reason, you can say, I'm taking some time out to travel, or I'm taking some time out to focus on my family, or whatever your reason is. And of course, if you've retired from working, you simply say, I'm retired. All of these are natural, comfortable ways to answer the question without feeling awkward. Okay, so now let's move on to the really interesting part, describing what you actually do in your job, because this is where you can really make the conversation engaging and help people understand your work.
Yes, this is where your answer becomes more than just a label. There are three really useful phrases that can help you structure this part of your answer. The first is, I have to, which describes your responsibilities or tasks. For example, I have to manage a team of 5 people, or I have to create content for social media. The second phrase is, I'm responsible for, which is similar but sounds a bit more formal and emphasizes your areas of accountability, like, I'm responsible for customer relations, or I'm responsible for maintaining the company website. And the third phrase is, most of my time is spent, which tells people how you actually spend your working hours. For instance, most of my time is spent in meetings with clients, or most of my time is spent analyzing data and creating reports.
These phrases are gold, honestly. Let me give you a full example of how you might use all three together. Imagine you're a project manager. You could say, I have to coordinate different teams and make sure projects stay on schedule. I'm responsible for about 5 major projects at any given time. Most of my time is spent in meetings, checking progress, and solving problems when they come up. See how that paints a complete picture? The person you're talking to can really visualize what your day looks like. Or let's say you're a chef. You might say, I have to plan menus and prepare dishes for our restaurant. I'm responsible for managing the kitchen staff and ordering ingredients. Most of my time is spent actually cooking during service, but I also spend time developing new recipes and training junior chefs.
Those examples are perfect because they're detailed but still conversational. You're not just listing duties like you're reading from a job description, you're telling a little story about your work. And here's something important to remember. You can adapt how much detail you give based on the situation. If someone just makes small talk and asks what you do, maybe you give a shorter answer. But if you're at a networking event or someone seems genuinely interested, you can expand and give more details. That's the beauty of having these different phrases in your toolkit. You can mix and match depending on the conversation. Now, let's talk about something equally important, expressing how you feel about your job. Because this is what really makes your answer personal and interesting.
Oh, this is one of my favorite parts because when you share how you feel about your work, you're not just giving information, you're connecting with the other person. If you love your job, there are some wonderful adjectives you can use that go beyond just saying it's good or I like it. For instance, you can say your job is stimulating, and that word means it's exciting. It gives you energy. It keeps your mind active. You're constantly learning and thinking about new things. Or you might describe your job as satisfying, which means it gives you a real sense of achievement. Like at the end of the day, you feel like you've accomplished something meaningful.
Those are great words. Another one I love is rewarding. This is often used for jobs where you help people or contribute to something bigger than yourself. Teachers often describe their work as rewarding because even though it's challenging, seeing students learn and grow gives them such positive feelings. Nurses might say the same thing. The work is hard, but knowing you're helping people through difficult times makes it incredibly rewarding. And then there's creative, which is perfect if your job allows you to use your imagination, come up with new ideas, or make things. Designers, writers, architects, these kinds of roles are often creative. And here's an interesting word, challenging. Now, this can be positive or negative depending on context, but when you use it to describe a job you like, it means the work is difficult in a good way. It pushes you to think, to learn, to grow.
Exactly. Challenging in a positive sense means you're not bored, you're being stretched, you're developing new skills. But of course, not everyone loves their job, and that's okay too. If you don't particularly enjoy what you do, there are ways to express that honestly without being too negative. Instead of just saying, my job is boring, which is pretty basic, you could say it's mind-numbing. That's a more vivid way of saying extremely boring, so boring that it feels like your mind goes numb, like it shuts down from lack of stimulation. Or if your work makes you really tired, you could describe it as exhausting. That works for both physical tiredness and mental tiredness.
Right. And here's a word that's quite specific, thankless. A thankless job is one where nobody notices or appreciates what you do. You work hard, but you don't get recognition or gratitude. It can be really demotivating. And if you feel like your job has no future, no opportunities for growth or promotion, you might call it a dead-end job. That phrase suggests you're stuck. There's nowhere to go from where you are. And if you really, really dislike your job, there's a very strong phrase you can use, soul-destroying. This means the job is so unpleasant and draining that it affects your whole sense of well-being. It's pretty dramatic, so you would only use this for a job you really hate.
These words are powerful, and they really help you express your feelings accurately. But here's a tip. If you're talking to someone you don't know well, especially in a professional setting, you might want to be diplomatic about expressing negative feelings about your job. You can be honest, but not too intense. All right, we've covered so much ground. Let's try something interactive now. We're going to say a few useful phrases, and we'd love for you to repeat them out loud with us. Don't worry about being perfect, just give it a try. Speaking out loud is one of the best ways to practice, even if you're by yourself. Ready? Let's start with a simple introduction. Repeat after us. I work in digital marketing.
Great. Now, let's try, I'm responsible for managing client projects. And one more. Most of my time is spent developing new strategies. How did that feel? Even just saying these phrases out loud helps your mouth and brain get used to these patterns. The more you practice speaking, even to yourself, the more natural it becomes when you're in a real conversation. All right, let's bring everything together now. We're going to show you how you can combine all these elements into longer, more natural answers. This is how real people actually talk about their jobs when someone asks.
Perfect. So let's imagine someone asks you what you do. Here's a full example. I'm a physical therapist. I work in a busy clinic that treats sports injuries. I have to assess patients, create treatment plans, and guide them through exercises to help them recover. I'm responsible for about 15 patients a week. Most of my time is spent working directly with patients, but I also have to do paperwork and communicate with doctors. I find it really rewarding because I get to see people heal and get back to doing the activities they love. It can be challenging because every patient is different, but that's what makes it interesting. See how that flows? It's not just a list of facts, it's a conversational answer that gives a complete picture.
That's such a natural way to talk about work. Let me give another example. Say you're a high school teacher. I'm a history teacher. I work in a public high school in the suburbs. I have to prepare lessons, teach 4 classes a day, and grade assignments and exams. I'm responsible for around 90 students across different grade levels. Most of my time is spent in the classroom teaching, but I also meet with parents, attend faculty meetings, and organize field trips. I'd say my job is both challenging and satisfying. It's challenging because keeping teenagers engaged isn't always easy, and you have to be creative with your lesson plans. But it's satisfying when you see a student finally understand a concept they were struggling with, or when a former student comes back and tells you that you inspired them.
I love that example because it shows personality and passion. It's not robotic at all. You can really hear that this person cares about their work. And that's what we want you to aim for when you talk about your job. Don't just recite facts. Share what makes your work meaningful to you, what the challenges are, what you enjoy. That's what makes conversations interesting and memorable. So now, we want to encourage you to try this yourself. Think about your job, or if you're a student, think about your studies. How would you describe what you do using the phrases and structures we've talked about today?
Yes, and if you're feeling brave, we'd actually love to hear from you. You can pause this episode right now and practice saying your answer out loud. Or if you're listening on a platform where you can leave comments, write out your answer and share it with us. We love hearing from our listeners, and it's great practice for you. Even if you make mistakes, that's totally fine. That's how we learn. The important thing is that you're actively practicing and not just passively listening. Language learning is all about using what you learn, not just consuming information.
Absolutely. And remember, the goal isn't to memorize a script. The goal is to have these phrases and structures in your mind so that when someone asks you about your job in real life, you can pull them out naturally and adapt them to your situation. The more you practice, the more automatic it becomes. You won't have to think so hard about which phrase to use. It'll just flow. Okay, we're getting close to wrapping up, but before we do, let's do a quick recap of what we've covered today. We started with how to introduce your job using phrases like I'm a, I work in, and I work for. Each one emphasizes something slightly different about your work.
Then we talked about describing your company, whether it's big or small, local or international, and what it does. We also covered what to say if you're self-employed or not currently working. After that, we dove into describing what you actually do day to day, using I have to, I'm responsible for, and most of my time is spent. These phrases help you paint a picture of your daily work life. And finally, we explored how to express your feelings about your job with specific adjectives like stimulating, rewarding, challenging, exhausting, or soul-destroying, depending on how you actually feel.
And the beautiful thing is that once you have these tools, you can use them in so many situations, not just when someone asks about your job, but also in job interviews, on professional networking sites, when you're writing a bio for a conference, or even when you're just introducing yourself in a new class or group. These are really versatile phrases that will serve you well in many contexts. So we really hope you feel more confident now about talking about your work in English. Remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about being able to communicate clearly and naturally.
Absolutely. And before we say goodbye, we just want to remind you that learning English is a journey, and every conversation is practice. Don't be afraid to talk about your work with people. Don't worry if you stumble over words or can't remember the perfect phrase in the moment. That's completely normal. The more you put yourself out there and have real conversations, the more comfortable you'll become. And you know what? People are usually really interested in learning about what others do for work. It's a universal topic that everyone can relate to. So use that to your advantage. Practice this topic because it's one you'll use again and again.
That's such a great point. And we're so proud of you for investing time in your English learning by listening to this podcast. That takes commitment and motivation, and those qualities will take you far. Keep practicing, keep listening, keep speaking, and most importantly, be patient with yourself. You're doing great. Thank you so much for spending this time with us today. We'll be back with another episode soon, and we can't wait to continue this journey with you.
Thanks for listening to Podcasts with Ali and Aiza. Until next time, keep practicing, stay curious, and remember, every conversation is an opportunity to learn something new. Take care, everyone.
Bye for now. See you next episode.